I'm Dániel Ruthner. Thank you. Okay. Thank you, Norby, for the opportunity. And I would like to start with a few questions, because I'm really curious. How many of you are new to software development? Anyone just... Cool, we got some people here. How many of you work as a developer? I guess that's more, right? Almost everyone. Right. And how many of you work for more than 2 years as a software developer? Okay, so we have some experienced people here. That's nice. About me, I started to learn coding in the summer of 2018. So for the 2 years question, I wouldn't have lifted my hands. And the main reason I started is because I wanted to develop an app. It was a different one than the one I'm currently working on. And I asked someone who I knew did programming to make it for me, and I would pay for him. And we did our first version, and it didn't turn out quite what I thought it will be. And it was also a bit expensive. And I figured that unless I make it on my own, I would have to spend all my money plus debt until I get it done. So I started to learn JavaScript because this guy created the app in Node.js. And I thought if he used it, maybe it's the right thing to do. And I started learning at home. And I found out that programming is the thing for me. I really enjoyed it because it's problem solving, trial and error, and you get this very great feeling when you finally get it right and it works and it gives you extra kicks. This is why I like it. Yeah, I have some notes. So also coding, as it turned out, holds some really great opportunities to meet people, and also in the job market. It's a little bit different than other job markets, which is just an added benefit. I love learning. Of course I do, because I learned to code. But I also like to learn other stuff other than technical stuff. I like to learn soft skill related stuff as well. And for this, I used to read a lot of books. And I figured it out that it takes a lot of time. Your hands are busy, and you need to sit and read for quite long. So if I just listen to the audio version, I can do something else in the meanwhile. Like I can do the laundry or just walk or anything. So I transitioned to listening to audiobooks, which I found really helpful. But I was using my phone's media player for that, and it lacked some features I really wanted to have. And this is why I've decided to create an audio app that has some extra features, focusing on listening to longer programs, like remembering the playback and all sorts of stuff. So I've decided to make this audio streaming app, and I'm a JavaScript developer, so I chose to do it in JavaScript in the browser, at least first. So the goal was to make it cross-platform, so it works on Android, it works on iPhone, it works on a PC. And also, I wanted two features mainly. One is the ability to add bookmarks, so that I know what information is where. And the other one was the ability to change the playback speed, so that I can listen faster or slower or whatever I need. For the stack, I chose Angular, because currently I work as an Angular developer. Actually, it's my first job as a programmer, and I really got to love the framework, although the learning curve is a bit high, but after a while it's very fun to work with. And I chose Node.js because that's also in JavaScript. but actually switched to TypeScript because Angular is in TypeScript. I saw all the benefits compared to JavaScript, and I thought it's a good opportunity to learn something new. So the first task was to get the audio work in the browser, because that's at least required to stream audio programs. And for that, it didn't take a long search. I found out that well, first, of course, I needed to set up a quick Express server and create a request handler, and this is what I put in. So this is the convention for making range requests, that is requesting data partially from a server. In the case of an audio file, because it's huge and you're just listening to one part at a time, this is what I used. It's very simple. You just set the headers, you specify the range, and the server sends back the data you requested. And on the front end, it's even simpler, because I just needed to use one tag. That's the HTML audio tag. Very simple to use. You specify the source to the file, and it does everything else on its own. And this is how the audio tag looks. Pretty simple. Already has built-in features. So I felt really great. After just one day, I achieved already what I thought was the hardest part. Well, OK. Next task. Now I need to jump in time, so seek through the audio. Maybe if I want to listen to the second chapter, I start from there. And for this, I could set the current time property of the audio tag, and it just jumped there. Pretty simple, right? And turns out it also supports playback speed. Also really simple. I just set the amount, and it starts speeding up, slowing down. It works like a charm. Like a boss again. So I built this thing just to play around with it and test it out how it works as a proof of concept. And I loaded some bookmarks. I put out some buttons to change the speed and jump through the file. And I found out something strange. So I started listening to the book, and I saw, OK, here's a chapter. I take the note of the time, I take note of the title, listen on, take note again until I finish the whole thing. And then, as I was doing this, I refreshed the page and clicked on the bookmark, and it started playing from an entirely different time, or at least like 1 minute later, 30 seconds earlier. It was totally unpredictable. I didn't understand why. Because I set the time, and last time it worked, now it doesn't. What the hell? So I did some Google searching, and I found out that the audio tag is not very reliable, especially playing longer time files. So if you play like a 2-minute file, you listen to it, you don't notice the strangeness of it. But if it's longer, it turns out that it's not very good at handling long files and jumping between times or seeking through the media. So I did some Google search and found out that the thing behind the audio tag is the WebAudio API, especially the audio context. And this is what's the engine behind the thing. And I found out, or I thought that maybe I could write my own audio buffering engine, handler, call it whatever you want. So I would request the bytes that I need, and then it must be accurate, because if I request the 100,000th byte, it will always start from the 100,000th byte, and it always contains the same data. So I started writing that, and it had some drawbacks, and it was a bit hard. But after some extensive Google searches, trial and error, and just being at it until I got it to work, no. I tried it out, but for some strange reason, when I changed the playback speed, the pitch also changed. So if I played it longer, the pitch went up. When I played it slower, the pitch went down. And it was weird, because the audio tag didn't have this issue. So I figured this won't work either. I need to try something else. So what about keep the audio tag, because it works well, but implement the buffering and all the data handling myself? So this was my third try, trying to get it work. By this time I was around, I don't know, 3 months into it, because I was also working, and in my free time I was trying to get it done. And yeah, looking back at it, it felt like a nightmare. But anyway, so this way I could just create a media source and give this media source object to the audio tag, and then this way I could take over of all the data handling, and I could implement however I wanted it to do. And it was a great learning experience, actually, because there were a lot of small edge cases that I need to handle, and I had to come up with a brand new architecture for this, and for me it was also new. So I tried out. On the right side, there is the data about the chunks, so I had to set the offset and calculate the chunk sizes in bytes and all these detailed things. And then I tried out again, and it appears to be working pretty fine until I refresh the page. So it's again the same issue. For some weird reason, when I jump to a location, well, at least that time it worked, because it was loading the same exact bytes that I requested. So that time got fixed. But there was still a difference between me loading the data or starting from the 0 second and then going to the same amount of time. And it was a different audio playing at the same amount of time. And then I started looking somewhere else, because I spent this horrible amount of time coding that turned out to be totally not useful, because I had to throw it out. It didn't work. And turns out that the problem was lying in the format, because MP3 is such an audio format that if you cut it in half, it still makes sense. So anywhere you cut, any piece you take of MP3, it can be played, just like a worm. When you cut a worm in half, it results in 2 worms. When you cut an MP3 in half, it results in 2 MP3s. But it had a drawback that Chrome, and so when you play an MP3, it's unpredictable where the timestamps are at. So you need to parse through the whole file in order to get accurate timestamps. Otherwise, the browser just tries to guess where you are when you scroll. And this is what the problem came from. And I looked at all the other formats that would work in the browser, and there were some other formats that you can see on the screen. But the one that I found the best was OGG, because when I scrolled using OGG, it always played the same part of the audio. It was really consistent. So I thought, yes, I'm onto something. It will work. But of course, Safari doesn't support it. So it doesn't work in iOS. And there was just one file type I found. And I'm actually, if you have any suggestions, I'm very happy to hear it. But the only other file type I found that worked on iPhone reliably, it was the, oh, it went again. So it was the WAV format, which is actually not very good for streaming on the web, because it's 10 times bigger than the OGG or the MP3. So if you wanted to stream audio on your mobile data, it would exhaust it pretty quickly, which is not good. So I went with OGG, and I have a solution for, except for iOS. Now it works. But I'm still trying to solve this issue. This is how the app looks like. It's nothing special. I just thought I would show it to you. So on the left, you can see the books. On the right, it holds the table of contents. You can go into the contents more. And just one other thing that was also a tough issue is getting the style right. Because when you open it in the browser, it's an app, but you can, if you swipe, it will start moving the whole thing. And it looked very, very buggy, very crappy. And it took also some experimenting to find a workaround that would make it work actually as an app would work on your phone. Yeah. So it was some pretty long hours when I thought I hated programming. But I just had to keep at it, and I had to keep on trying and Googling and experimenting and coding for months for apparently no reason. But then it turned out to work. It felt good, and I found it rewarding and compensating against the hard work. And of course, I also learned a lot. So on this project, it was the first project I wrote a full CRUD, apart from when I was learning, but then I just followed videos, so I don't count it as working on my own. And I implemented authentication for the audio streaming also. And at first, I started in 2 repositories, so 2 projects, the backend and the frontend. And I came across monorepo, which brings them together, so you can share files with the backend and frontend. And that was also a great learning experience. Yeah, so I think it's a great thing to do our own apps, and it's a great way to be creative. And what I also learned, that the hardest part, because now I have this, which I'm not very happy with. I have a lot of ideas how to change it or make it better, because this is the first UI I made for it. So after I got to the point where the issue is not figuring out how to implement something, but it is figuring out what to implement. And as a developer, I think the hardest part, once you get through this pain period of learning something new, the hardest part is actually figuring out what to implement. Yeah, so actually that's it. Thank you very much.